There is a disgusting new way to end any bad habit or addiction, and you're not gonna like it, but it is gonna work. So quitting a bad habit, most people think it comes down to an identity shift or changing your discipline or healing from trauma, hitting rock bottom or finding your purpose. But all of this usually just leads to a recursion loop. This time it will be different and you do the bad thing. This time it will be different and you do the bad thing. Trust me, I've been there. I know what I'm talking about because I've helped hundreds of people across the past years getting through something like this. So I've found that there's only two levers that you can really pull for behavior change. Only two things. The first lever is frequency. I'm defining frequency as how many times does the behavior occur in a given period of time. So answer the question, how often does it happen? So imagine if before you get that donor house 365 times a year, so every single day, and then you move that to getting that donor house 52 times a year, so just once a week. What does that mean? That is an 85.7 decrease in frequency of that behavior set. So here comes the disgusting part. What if we confined the bad habit to a single day in the week? So even if you just did this thing for one time a week, a cheat day, if you will. So now I know what your reaction is going to be. But Carl, that's disgusting. Well, I know, but it works. So let me talk about the objections that you probably have to this idea. Well, isn't it better to work on completely deleting the bad habit? If you could delete the habit completely, then why are you watching this video? You're watching this video because obviously you're not happy with the results that you have. So why not give something else a try? Second idea is, isn't this admitting defeat? Isn't doing the bad thing on a cheat day basis, doing this on a one time a week basis, admitting defeat that you can't solve the problem? Well, all I'll say to that is, how is making progress admitting defeat? If you go from doing a bad habit every single day to doing it once a week, how is that admitting defeat? You're making progress. And the last thing is, does this really solve the problem long term? So just the frequency is not going to cut it. And that's why we have the two levers. We're going to use both of them. The second lever, lever number 2, is in fact intensity. So intensity is defined as how extreme is the behavior. So the intensity, right? The magnitude of the behavior. How much of the behavior are you doing and how impactful is it on your life? That's the metric which I call intensity. So I'll give you an example. And I'm going to use this example of pornographic content. It applies to any bad behavior, but I'm going to use this because it's easy to understand, right? A person will start with generic static images which cause arousal and moves to generic video content. But at some point, that's not stimulating enough. And then you move to niche video content. So you're searching for specific search terms in these websites in order to find the kind of video which just tickles your pickle. You know what I mean? Like something which is just specific to you and it's niche. And then you go to extreme niche video content. Like you have a very small subset of videos which appeal to you and you kind of keep going deeper and deeper in that specific niche of pornographic content. This is a pattern which I think you'll recognize. This is a pattern which I see all the time in my years of doing coaching under the banner of behavior change. This is the exact same principle of progressive overload. I mean, think about this, right? When you go to the gym, well, in the start, even like a 5-pound dumbbell causes enough stimulus for your biceps to grow. But with time, especially after your first year of lifting, that 5-pound dumbbell is not cutting it. You need the 35-pound dumbbell. And once you get more and more advanced, you need 45-pound dumbbell. You're doing 50-pound dumbbell curls. It's not that the movement changed. It's just that you needed more and more intensity. In this case, more and more weight in order to get the same stimulus response from your muscles. In that same way, when it comes to a bad habit, at some point, static images don't cut it. Generic video content doesn't cut it. You need extremely niche and weird, almost perverted and extreme and almost ugly scenes that you need to watch in order to make that stimulus response high enough for you to get the pleasure that you're looking for. If that sounds familiar to you, I get it, dude. I don't like to talk about this because it's uncomfortable, but almost every man and many, many women, in fact, I would say a large fraction of women, like 90%, have gone through something like this. For women, it's slightly different. Women who have gotten coaching from me or just spoken to me regardless of the actual coaching have told me that it's actually the toys which are more addicting, and to the point at which some women lose their ability to orgasm because they've been overstimulated by these toys. Because, I mean, the thing is, when you have like the Turbo Plunger 3000 or something, it's like no man can compete against that. Like your dick doesn't vibrate, you know what I mean? Like toys can be more stimulating than an actual man's body parts. So at some point, the women who use these toys, they get so beyond the sensation that they can only use toys. So similar concept for us as guys. We don't use toys. Well, I don't. I'm not trying to, maybe you do. I don't know. I don't know your situation. But either way, we do use videos. And that has the same progression curve. So again, like I said, we have the two levers, right? We have the intensity and we have the frequency. If you have a high frequency and high intensity bad habit, then you're cooking your brain. Literally, like this is you right now. Like this is you, hollow eyes. This is where you don't want to be. But if you are able to drive that bad habit to low intensity and low frequency, it's not perfect. You still are doing the habit, but you have hope. You're moving forward, and that's what matters. That's what I believe matters. So we have two avenues of approach. You can reduce the frequency, you can reduce the intensity. I'm going to show you how to do either. So the worst case is you are consuming extreme niche pornographic content every single day, 365 days of the year. That's where we're starting from. Let's imagine. So what we do, step number one, is you reduce the frequency to 3 times a week. So I'm not telling you to quit. Just reduce your frequency from 7 times a week to 3 times a week. That's already a big decrease. The second step is important. You mute the audio when you're watching the same videos. Why? Because when you're watching a piece of pornographic content, there's two input sources of sensory input. There's the audio and there's the video. So if you remove the audio, you have reduced 50% of the sources of stimulation. In other words, you've reduced the intensity. You'll find that in this progression curve, there's an oscillation between reducing frequency and there's an reducing intensity. We do these alternatively. So first we reduce the frequency, next we reduce the intensity. Next we reduce the frequency to once a week. So we went from 3 times a week to once a week. Okay. Then we reduce the intensity again. Stop using search, homepage only. So the search function in pornographic websites is the biggest enemy. You always use it to find the kind of video. Now, of course, each person has their own tastes and whatnot, but the kind of video which appeals to you based on your behaviors, which you've trained to your brain pretty much. Stop using search, right? Just use whatever the homepage offers. If it's on the homepage, you can watch it. If it's not on the homepage, don't watch it. So you're basically untraining the extremeness and the nicheness of the content that you watch and going towards more generic. It's still bad. It's still pornographic content, but it's generic rather than niche. That's my point. Next, you reduce the frequency yet again. You reduce the frequency to once in 2 weeks. And then you reduce the intensity once again. And you go from videos to static images. So again, a video is a series of moving images, obviously, designed in a way to arouse you. Instead of that, you use static images, already less stimulating. And then finally, you'll reduce the frequency to once a month. Now, of course, there's a possibility that you go backwards. But now you have the solution. You already have the steps. So if you do go backwards, you have some kind of relapse. Okay, who cares? Just untrain the habit again. And then if you relapse again, you just go through the same exact process again. If you reduce the frequency, you are winning. If you reduce the intensity, you are winning. If you reduce both, you're really winning. That's the main thing which I want to give you. I'm going to tell you about the theory of constraints, because this is going to be very important for the next step. I'll give you a business example. Imagine you own a restaurant and you want to make more money. Awesome. Well, you think, well, I want to make more money. How do I do this? I'm going to get a better chef. So you have a Michelin 1-star chef and you get the Michelin 2-star chef. But the profit has increased, but not by a lot. So you're like, maybe I should get the Michelin 3-star chef. You get the 3-star chef and you keep going and you get better and better chefs, but your profit isn't improving at the rate that you would think that it should, especially because each of these chefs are costing you more and more. Then the idea comes to your head. Well, what if I just bought more floor space and had more tables and more waiters? Is that what's causing my business to not grow? And then you have twice the amount of floor space, twice the number of tables, and your business expands by 2x overnight. So in this story, obviously contrived, the constraint of the business, the bottleneck of the business was never the chefs, it was the floor space. Where am I going with this? How does it have anything to do with addiction? So my point here is, for some people, absolutely the bad habit, the addiction, is the bottleneck in their life. That is the thing which is stopping them from making progress. If that's the case, obviously focus on getting rid of that first. But for many people, they use their addiction or their bad habit as an excuse to not make progress. This is the case. I've seen it all the time. So for these people, the addiction or bad habit is not the bottleneck. In other words, if the bad habit is low intensity or low frequency, then stop worrying about it, solve the next problem, and the bad habit will go away as a result of getting starved out because you don't have the time or energy for the bad habits. So how long should this entire process take? I'll give you the answer. It takes about 12 weeks. So it takes about 12 weeks to go from like severely addicted to it not being a problem anymore. And I know this because, again, I have experience. I've been coaching people on behavior change for years at this point, almost 3 years. And so everything I say is based on data. It's not based on my opinion. This is the first time I'm giving you the exact protocol that I use when I coach somebody. So what does the protocol look like? So week 1, you go from daily to 3 times a week. Week 2, you go to video only. So you mute the audio. Week 3, you go to once a week. Week 4, you use only the homepage, no search anymore. Week 5 and 6, you drive the frequency down to once every other week, so once in 2 weeks. Week 7, you go to static images only. Week 8, 9, 10, and 11, you're going to once a month. All right, makes sense so far? And then week 12, which is the final week, you start using just your imagination. At that point, I would say that you've solved the problem, or at least you've driven it to a point at which it's no longer the bottleneck. But Cal, this is too simple. Okay. That's why you should try it. And is this just for porn? Well, no, it's not. You can create a de-escalation ladder for any bad behavior. I'll leave some examples in the comments. I mean, you can use your imagination, right? You can create a de-escalation ladder similar to this for literally any bad behavior. Binge eating, you can create a de-escalation ladder. Smoking, you can create a de-escalation ladder. Weed or alcohol, you can create a de-escalation ladder. That's all you got to do. Like, just use the same principles as this video, use your own brain, and make the de-escalation ladder, which makes sense for you based on your exact circumstances. And a pro tip, I did a video, it'll be out soon, or it'll be already out by the time you watch this. It's called, I did 100 hours of meditation in 10 days. That video is kind of like the counterpart to this video. Strongly recommend you watch that because that has a segment on anti-addiction. So let's go over some common mistakes that people will make as they try to reduce a habit. So first thing is, I want results now. I'm going to quit this cold turkey. I don't need the de-escalation ladder. I'm just going to quit right now. Like, dude, if you did that, then why are you watching this video? You know what I mean? Like, if you already solved the problem, good for you. Why are you here? If you are here, it means you haven't solved the problem. So let's solve the problem. So going cold turkey, there's literally an app called Cold Turkey. And I strongly recommend this app, by the way. This is a stupidest story, and it's so funny, but I want to share this with you. When I was younger, and this was a real, this was the bottleneck in my life at the point. And I got this app called Turkey. It basically bricked my laptop entirely in the sense that it would prevent any and all distracting websites from popping up. One day, some kind of stimulus appeared in my life. Like, something drove me. I don't know what it was. What I ended up doing was I contacted customer support for Cold Turkey, and I lied to them. I used the Niccolo Machiavelli tier tactics to manipulate them. And I told them basically that I accidentally locked my work-related files behind your software, and I really need the access codes to get my work-related files. I was telling them, like, I'm going to get fired if I don't have these files and all this bullshit. And they probably saw through this. They probably get requests like this all the time. But in the end, they gave me the access codes, or they gave me like the admin codes. And I had to literally reset my I had to reinstall Windows on my laptop in order to get the software out. For what? Like, so much brain power, so much creativity used in the service of what? 5 minutes of watching a video and then having that short-term pleasure? So stupid. That's why I'm saying going cold turkey didn't work for me. And this is where I ended up at, hollow again. So let's go back to this, right? How do you build good habits? You use progressive overload. How do you delete bad habits? You use progressive underload. It's actually that simple. Don't make it more complex than it has to be. This is an image of an astronaut who is exercising in space. So if you know anything about this, astronauts, when they go in space, they obviously don't have gravity. And so their muscles atrophy. And as a result, they need to continuously exercise even in space so that their muscles don't waste away. For a bad habit, we actually want it to atrophy. And that's why we use the de-escalation ladder. So second mistake which people will make, which I have made, is waiting for the life-changing event. So this was years ago. I saw this news article, and it's about this passenger aircraft which accidentally flew through a volcanic ash cloud. And what happened was the silica and whatnot from the volcanic ash turned into glass inside the engines of the aircraft. And this caused the engines to seize up, and the aircraft was about to crash. It just was losing elevation at an extremely rapid rate. And the people in that aircraft basically thought, well, I'm going to die. Like, this is the end. I'm done. And this is the story of my life. But it so happened that when the plane reached a lower altitude, the engines eventually did get freed up, and the plane was able to save itself, and nobody died. So every member in that plane including the pilots, had a near-death experience. They thought that they were going to die. It so happened by a miracle that they survived. I wanted this. I wanted this for myself because I thought that if I had that moment of clarity, near-death experience, that in those 5 minutes before death, it would make sense to me. And we hear about stories like this all the time. Somebody has a near-death experience, they turn around their life, and their life improves, and they achieve their goals and whatnot. But this is nonsense. This is based on survivorship bias. I had a friend in the recent months, I think sometime last year, he got into a car accident. Car hit him when he was just walking. He was a pedestrian, and his skull literally fractured. He was rushed to the ER, and he thought he was done. He thought he was going to die. Like, he was badly injured, I'll just say that. But he didn't die. The doctors were able to save him. And what he told me is, after a couple months, life just went on as normal. Things just reset. Old habit patterns return and nothing really changed, even though he had that near-death experience. My point here is that you might be waiting for something to happen in order to change your life. It's not going to happen. And even if a thing happens which is outside the norm, it's not going to be enough to change your life. It's progressive overload for good habits and progressive underload for bad habits. That's what makes lasting change happen, in my experience anyway. Number 3. People think that they need an identity shift in order to change their behaviors. This is stupid. So I thought this too. I thought I will join the army. I will become a soldier. And this change in the identity will cause all the other changes that I need, and I will finally be disciplined, I will be this, that. But no, it doesn't turn out that this is true. There are many soldiers in the army, probably most of them, who have one form of addiction or bad habit or things like this going on for them. So the thing is, what is identity, right? What is identity? It's just your behavior set. So people who sell identity shifts, they don't know what the fuck you're talking about. They're making it more complex than it has to be. It's just a change in your behavior set. I mean, it's not like this is new. Aristotle, again, I forget the exact dates. I think something around 300 BC, because it has to be around the time of Alexander. You are what you repeatedly do. It is what you do repeatedly that informs your identity. So if you are thinking that you need an identity change in order to change what you repeatedly do, you are putting the cart before the horse. You're getting it wrong. You're putting it backwards. And the fourth mistake which people will make will dramatize their bad habits. They'll dramatize their addictions. They'll say, I'm fighting my demons. This is the hardest battle. Some like stupid shit. And I used to do this myself. Like if you go to my old posts on YouTube, I will have done this exact same mistake. I'm fighting my demons. But dude, you're not fighting your demons. You're just a bad habit. It's just a bunch of pixels on the screen. You know what I mean? Like it's just a bad habit. Like don't give it fangs when it doesn't have fangs. The more dramatized you make this, the more you make this into a heroic struggle, the more you will sink. Why? Because if you see this as some kind of heroic struggle, then that means that you want to be the hero of that story. It means by that you don't want the struggle to end in a sense. It is not your mission. Like your mission in life is not to get rid of bad habits. You have a mission that's far greater than that. The bad habit is just like one road bump along the way. Don't make your life about de-addiction. Doesn't make sense. I will say that trivialize it. Don't give it fangs. It's not like, dude, I'm for real. Like the actual struggle starts once you get past this phase, right? Your enemies are just pixels on a screen. And then the fifth mistake which people make is thinking, once I solve this, my life will begin for real. So I'll give you an analogy. In the game Pokemon, so there's an obstruction on the path of the game. It's a plant. It's literally a plant, and it says this tree looks like it can be cut down. So you need a move called cut. It's called TM cut. You can teach it to a couple of your Pokemons, and they can cut the friggin' plant, and then you can proceed with the game. So imagine that you got to this plant, and you just stand there and waiting for the move cut to appear. It will never appear. You'll just be stuck there forever. Instead, just play the rest of the game. Explore the land that you do have access to. Get skills. Improve your Pokemons. When you come back, you'll have the move cut, and then you can cut it and move to the next part of the map. That's how I see it. So your life began the day you were born. And on the day you were born, you began to die. Your body will never be perfect. Your mind will never be perfect. Accept it for what it is. The game is already on. And we all fight broken. People think that if I do X, then I can start Y. But then you'll just suffer twice because your excuse protects you from your ego. You say, if I do X, I can start Y. And you never do X because you're really scared of Y. And then you should be so busy that you don't have time for bad habits. You need to do more, especially if your age is between 25 and 30. Like this is go time, boys. Like there's no excuses. You need to be on it now. This is your last chance to make a step change in your life, because you're not going to get any younger. How to do more? Should you watch more YouTube? Should you read more books? Potentially. But really, in my view, you don't need more information. The information is already synthesized. You can use AI and shit nowadays. You need accountability. That's the bottleneck which you haven't crossed, or many of us haven't crossed. We provide you with an accountability coach for free. Not AI, real human being, 4-week behavior change challenge. 9 hours of deep work per week. That's what our average members see. 7 hours of sleep per week extra. That's what our average members see. And we know this because we actually track this because we have Aura rings. We are a partner. 1 pound of lean mass per month on average. We have 200 members who are doing something like this right now. There's a link in the description. Get signed up. We can only take about 5 new members per week, simply because we can only give away so much free service per week. You probably understand there's economics behind this. Now, hearing this, you're probably wondering how we could give away an entire month of service away for free. Well, it's because first, user feedback is what makes a product good, and we want user feedback. And second thing is, well, we want to find the right candidates for a long-term transformation. If that sounds like you, sign up now. Nothing to lose and potentially a lot to gain. If you want to win, you must lean in.